Welcome to Worthy Women Wednesday. Today we have a special guest. Melinda Lange is on here today. She is a powerful owner of a boutique called, I literally just blanked on the name, Burkiebelles.
Burkiebelles. Yes.
I know, I love it so much. Burkiebelles, which obviously we are both representing very well today. And so I'm really excited to not only hear how you started this company to empower women, but I'm also really excited to hear about your story of going through childhood abuse and really showing up powerfully by sharing that with your kids and having them go and feel empowered as well to support others who might be going through it as well. So thank you so much for being on my show today.
Thank you, Aleesha. It's so good to be here. You guys, she's a gem, let me tell you, like a diamond in the rough. I absolutely love her to death. So glad that we were able to connect. Aleesha's a good friend. And I think, I thank the Lord for that, because those are friends that will last a lifetime.
We had the privilege of doing a photo shoot in person together a few weekends
ago.
And so I got to meet you then. And then I also got to see you on stage speaking at this last event that we were both speaking at. And so I love seeing you speak in person and obviously getting to give you a hug and everything as well, which isn't always the case these days, right? We don't get to always meet people in person, but we are starting to, so that's good news. But so I would love to hear, first of all, I would love to start with your story and whatever you feel comfortable sharing in that, I would love to hear that. So I know I've heard your story, but I would love the audience as well to hear. And we will focus a lot on what you're doing now, how you're showing up in the world, and what has supported you in your healing journey.
Okay. My story, my parents had gotten a divorce when I was extremely young. And my mom had remarried when I was around 2 years old. I adored my stepfather. I thought he was, a knight in shining armor. I still had a relationship with my dad, and I had a stepdad, and I thought, life was good. It was, why not have two, dads? That was the perfect scenario. But I got a little bit older, and my stepdad had abused me. And so I had told my mother, and we went to our pastor and talked to him about it. And a lot of the, I just had gotten what was told back to me, throughout that process was, sometimes things like that happen to pretty girls. So what I took from that is the very absolute last thing I wanted to be was a pretty girl. I went through a huge phase where I kept my hair short, to the point where short, thinking, okay, maybe I won't be recognized as a pretty girl if I wear my hair short. I thought the rougher and harder I could play with the boys might just, not that I ever wanted to be a boy, but I almost envied the fact of in my mind, boys didn't have to deal with this. So that was something that I really, really kind of identity crisis, went into absolute identity crisis at that point. And so things rocked on. I just assumed that that's what happened to girls like me. It didn't matter how I cut my hair. It didn't matter how I changed my attitude. It didn't matter what I thought about it. Those things were still continuing to happen to me. I did not tell my mother about the continuation of the abuse, mainly because my abuser told me that, she picked forgiveness, and she picked me first. Why would she pick you? Which is totally wrong. And I know that that's such a lie, but in my mind, and as a young girl thinking, I'm not worthy enough for someone to not do this to me. I'm not worthy enough to be just who I am and who I was created to be, and look how I look. So I'm trying to change my appearance. I'm trying to please everybody in this situation, but not thinking that I am worthy enough to even express what is going on with me. So my mother in 2018 was going through the process of getting a divorce. And in that moment, I was able to tell her what had happened. That was devastating to her, because she said, things would have been so different had I known. But I wasn't able to tell her in that moment. So here I am, almost 40 years old, carrying that secret. And when let me tell you how powerful secrets are. You don't realize how powerful those things are until they start coming out. And in my situation, when they started coming out, there was so much untruth that I had told myself, and so much stuff that I'd piled on top of that, that it was almost shocking to me, because it was almost like I was hearing it for the first time, because it was the actual truth. It wasn't what I tried to pacify it as. It wasn't what I tried to pass it off as. It wasn't the lies that I had told myself about, oh, well, this happened because of me being a pretty girl, or this happened because I was from a broken home where my parents had been. All of these different lies that we tell ourselves were things that I had put in place of that abuse for 30 years. Wow. And so this entire time I'm around my abuser. It's just something that's not discussed, something that wasn't discussed in our family. And once it finally came out, I will tell you, everything hit the fan. It disrupted absolutely everything. My brother went and had a conversation with him and said, you know, you need to move on. And so he's not in our lives anymore, thankfully. And I'm dealing with the results of pretty much telling somebody for the first time, with a husband at that point and 4 children. It was very, 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 very imperative to me that my children knew what had happened to me. Not in the essence of details, but I wanted them to know that someone did something to me that altered who I was, that altered my thought process, that altered who I could become. And not that I'm still very, very grateful for where I am, but I wanted to get across to my kids that this is a big deal. And so with that, I had to tell them a little bit, because this was their grandfather. Yeah. This was their grandfather. And so I had to know, has anything happened to you? So in telling them that, I had to ask some pretty specific questions. My oldest at the time was 12. I had a 12-year-old boy at the moment when everything was coming out, a 10-year-old girl, a 7-year-old boy, and a 4-year-old or 3-year-old boy. So the 3-year-old, we had conversations that would be appropriate for a 3-year-old. But I will tell you, those were some of the hardest conversations that you have to have, because I was scared to death of the outcome. Had they, even though I was extremely, extremely careful of not letting them be around that person alone, I was just making sure that they were safe. Yeah. So, and asking them those questions was very hard. Fortunately, they were all safe. None of them had been in the situation that I had been in. But with speaking to my kids about that, that moment has allowed me to have open lines of communication with my kids, completely open. And that's something that I didn't have growing up, because I think it was just, you just don't talk about things like that. You don't say things like that, because those are really, really harsh things, and those children shouldn't think about those things and shouldn't have to have those conversations. And so there are many good things that have come out of this. And I know that's very difficult to say sitting on this side of it, but there has been good out of it. And I have to look at it like that, because my son asked me if he could share my story to a girl that he was talking to. And I said, okay, hold on. Wait a second. Why are you wanting to share why? You know, and he was like, well, I said, if you're wanting to share it because you're upset and you want to share this because this is kind of getting back at someone, I said, then no, we're not allowed to do that. Like that's just not, it's not us. It's not how we're going to roll with this. And he said, no, Mom, like, I think she's in the same situation. And I'm like, I'm sitting here thinking, at that time, he's well beyond me and his thought process. And I'm like, okay, do you want me to go over this with you? Do you need like a script? And he was like, no, I'm just going to talk to her. I'm like, okay. So he talks to her, and she said, he asked her if she needed anybody to talk to. And he said, please talk to me if you don't have anybody else to talk to. And she said, I want to talk to my mom first. Is that okay? And he said, absolutely. He was like, I don't ever have to have another conversation with you, like that. We're cool. We're good. But just go handle your business with your mom, because I don't want to see you at almost 40 having to deal with that. Yeah. So I have to sit and say, there are good things that have come out of this. Yeah. Has it been difficult? Absolutely. Is it difficult to navigate through life and trying to heal myself as I'm dragging 4 children through the muck with me? Yes, it's crazy. It's awful. But there are good moments too. And there are people's lives that are completely changed, because she's not going to have to be 40 before she gets the chance to start healing.
Yeah, that is so powerful. Oh my goodness. Like, just the fact that, because when I think about telling my kids someday, I always think about my daughters, right? I'm like, I never want my daughters to go. But the truth is, it happens in both genders.
It does.
Also,
it does.
Also empowering them to notice the signs in other people, which is so amazing. So, but thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for being so open.
You're welcome.
And I know that there's more and more will come up as we do this interview, but thank you so much for just being vulnerable and open in that, because I know that our audience can relate to so much of your story of finally telling somebody. And I know that you heard my story as well, that I finally told my mom as well. And she said it takes 2. And then you had that experience of your own pastor. And like, those are people. And if you're listening and maybe you haven't gone through abuse, or you don't understand that when you have authority come to you and tell you that it was, because you're beautiful, or because it takes 2, or whatever else, you just take that and you're like, your mind's like, check, okay, it was my fault. It's because I'm beautiful.
Because you are looking for a reason. You're looking for the very first explanation of that, because none of it makes sense in your mind. Just a little bit of psychological background behind that. I know that the moment that happened, I was not that little girl anymore. I became so hyper to everything that went on around me that I was not able to, as a child, to process things. So that carried on into adulthood. And anytime, just like Aleesha said, anytime you're in that situation, you're looking for answers. I want to know, why did this happen? I don't understand this. What is going on? And when somebody tells you it takes 2, oh, okay, there's my answer. When somebody tells you, you were just a pretty girl, oh, okay. When somebody tells you, they just had a bad day, those are things that you take those and you intersect those into just about every scenario throughout your childhood and sometimes into your adult life until you can heal from those things. So it's very, very, very important when you are talking to somebody who has been through trauma like that of any kind, be very gentle with what you say, because you would hate for them to take your words and run with them for 30 years.
And exactly. Yeah, it took 15 years too. And the truth is, what's amazing about you speaking up and what we're doing here is to empower you to realize that it's never too late also to.
Right.
Because in that, I heard you say that, like, when you did share it, something went off in you of like, it felt like the first time you finally could like share your truth. And so can you share what the days were like afterwards, or how you even were able to go to your mom and share that?
Well, it was difficult. I will be real honest with you. Those the first few days were kind of, I don't remember those first few days, to be real honest, because there was a lot of communication that I had to have with my younger brother. There was communication that I had to have with my stepmom, and inform her. There was communication that I had to have with my husband. And there was a lot of filling in the gaps and a lot of people not understanding. Why did you not tell me this? Why was this not a bigger deal? And I'm like, well, I don't know. Yeah. All of a sudden, it's a big deal to me now. But
Yeah.
for so long, I have just suppressed it and pushed it and pushed it and pushed it, that it wasn't, it was a big deal, but I was not treating it as a big deal. And I just assumed if I didn't treat it as a big deal, then everything was fine. What I realized is that was very, very far from the truth. I was not fine. I just didn't know that secret was what held the power to my kryptonite at that moment. I mean, that was the end all be all of the negativity in my life, that I didn't understand where it was coming from, the anxiety that I didn't understand where it was coming from, just the unsettledness.
Yeah, because like you said too, like you put on a mask of trying not to be for one, and you put on a mask afterwards, so you take that on as like that's who you are. You're like, okay, you know, like you started doing other stuff. Like, what were the things that you did afterwards to cope? Because I know for a while, like the things that I did afterwards were things that I beat up on myself for so long. I'm like, I cannot believe I would do stuff with other guys. I can't believe that I drank so much or cut myself, and I would beat up on myself for that. So what were those things for you, and how did you forgive yourself for one and release that?
The things for me were more, I had a little bit more aggression. So I felt, I didn't feel safe. And so when I didn't feel safe and I was unaware of my situation or unaware of what was coming at me, I would hold that and I would take that out in athletics. That's something that was an absolute godsend to me, was being able to be physical. I went through Taekwondo, and now we joke about it and say that was the worst thing that anyone could have ever, the worst tool that anyone could have ever given me, because at that age I was fighting boys and I didn't care. I did not care. What that taught me, and the Taekwondo is that taught me that I could go and pick a fight with anybody that I wanted to pick a fight with and pretty much win. I felt like I had those tools to go and just really have a self-satisfaction of, you're not going to overpower me. But that didn't happen with everyone. And that's what I could do that with everyone else except for the abuser. And that's what was really hard. I will say the one moment that got me to the point where I felt like I'm starting to heal from this. Remember, I'm, 30 years past this, and going through therapy and going through counseling and things like that. I've never allowed myself to play the victim. I have always said, I've always been extremely more mentally tough on myself, as far as, no, you're going to be fine. You're going to make this happen. You're going to do what you want to do, regardless of what has happened to you. You're not going to lay down and cry. You don't get that option. So that's just kind of always been my mentality. Now I tell my kids, we're going to make it or make it. Those are the options. And that's just how I live my life. But with that mentality through the healing process, the moment that I sat down and I looked back at that little girl, and I actually felt sorry for her, meaning me. I felt sorry for me at that age, of what I had lost, of what someone else had taken away from me, was the moment that I felt like I was able to start beginning to heal. And beginning to heal in the sense of, I am worthy enough for someone to not do that to me. I am worthy enough to train my children in a way that will help them see some signs there. I am worthy enough to have a voice now. Those are some things that were very, very difficult mindset for me, because I had gone for so long, these are the options, just make it or make it. That was my mentality. And then all of a sudden, to feel sorry for the girl that had something taken from her that she would never get back, was crazy to me.
Yeah, that's amazing. And so two things that you really shared that were so powerful there. Well, the whole thing that you shared was really powerful. But one thing you said was, for one, you said that your coping mechanism was playing sports. And I really want to drive this home because a lot of times people don't see the signs of girls who've gone through abuse or boys who are going through abuse. Because I know for me, like my friends were like, I never knew, Aleesha, like you
Right.
always had a like boyfriend, you were always like popular, you always were playing sports. And I'm sure that was the
You
case.
had everything all together.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you had everything all together until you got home. And so obviously you're doing something to support your sons and your kids to notice the signs. Can you support our audience in sharing like what are the signs to look for in your children or for their friends or whatever else?
Um,
Or
you
the
know,
questions they can ask.
now my kids, I do have one daughter. She doesn't really, there's not a whole lot of difference there. She still plays just as rough and hard as the boys do. But you know, I don't think that there's any one secret. There's not a secret. My avenue has been just talk to your kids. Just talk to your kids.
Yeah.
I have learned so much from them of things that are bothering them. And it may not even be something to the extent of being abused, but something to the extent that we can fix. We don't have to deal with this. You know, one of my boys is asked if he could go to counseling because he really has an issue with anger. And I said, we don't see that. We don't see any anger out of you. Like, you are the sweetest boy. And he was like, but it's in my head, Mom. And he said, I don't like that it's there. And so just talk to your kids. And when you notice that something is off, something's off.
Yeah.
Figure out what that is. And it may just be like, Mom, I don't know what's going on. Okay, well, what is it related to? Like, can we like at least just find a scenario where it's somewhat connected to what makes you feel this way? Is it school that makes you feel this way? Is it home that makes you feel this way? Is it going to your friends that make you feel this way? Is it on your team that makes you feel this way? What is bringing in that negative energy that we need to identify?
Yeah.
And majority of the time, you guys, I mean, I would say 99% of the time, it is, well, I just don't feel real comfortable in this situation because someone may have said something or I may have done something. And it's something small with my kids, but it's also so beneficial for them that I'm communicating with them and they have that communication with me, because that's a character building moment for them and for me. And they know that as they grow, they have those open lines of communication that are so prevalent. I can't imagine dealing with some of the things that our children have to deal with today. You know, my oldest says it's just toxic. He's like, hey, can I just do distance learning, please? It's just toxic. Like, what's toxic? Like, you're the life of the party. You know, people gravitate to you. Everybody loves you. Like, what is so toxic? And he was like, just attitudes. Just people's attitudes are just kind of toxic. So we've worked through some scenarios where I'm pretty rough on him. Sometimes they're just like, Mom, give us a break. But I'm like, no, you have the ability to create boundaries, whether you're in school or whether you're at home. You have the ability to create those boundaries to say, you know what, I'm not going to allow that toxicity to come into me. And so those are things that, you know, my 5-year-old knows, where it's like, nope, not today. I can't go there. I can't go there, Mom. And I'm like,
I cannot wait to hear. That is so huge. Honestly, even the fact that your son was able to say that he wanted to talk to a counselor is huge, because oftentimes we don't even share that with our kids. Like, hey, you get to talk about these things. You get to share about, like you said, it might be a small thing that ends up being a really huge thing. But if you talk about it, like you just said, it really opens up the floodgates for healing and releasing whatever is inside.
Oh, well, and girl, I mean, there were days that, you know, I would go to my therapist and I'm just like, I can't function today. You know, I can't process today. And yet I'm still taking my kids to school. You know, I'm still going to work. I'm still meeting with people that come in to see me at work. I'm still doing, you know, one-on-one face-to-face makeovers where I may have, you know, I have one tear, my whole face is red, as you can tell. you can tell that I'm in distress, but I kept going.
Yeah.
Because I knew that I was not going to give up on myself, but I also knew that I had 4 little ships that were floating behind me.
Yeah.
And I knew that there was no way that I could get them into the harbor if I didn't do it myself. And so that was my driving force, if you will. They saw the good, the bad, and the ugly. You know, all 4 of them could be sitting here right now and just be like, yep, we've heard this before. You know, it's not anything.
They're probably watching this interview, right? And they would be like, oh mom, yes. Like they'd be cheering you on, which is so huge that they are able to see their mom show up so powerfully, because I have like chills right now because I'm empowered by you. Like,
oh, well, it has been extremely ugly. I will tell you that.
Yeah. And that's okay. Yeah.
But sometimes ugly grows into something beautiful.
Yes, 100%. And we're not called to be perfect, right? And so often,
absolutely not.
Perfect, right? Perfect speaker, perfect coach, whatever it is. And so I love that you just show up so vulnerably and open, and for your family, for us right now, and for those around you. Something that I know you did, we talked about this off air when I met you the first time. What do you do with your family every single week? I remember it was like a board or something, or I'm like so excited to talk about it.
Oh goodness. Okay. The beginning of this year, I'm in the process of getting a divorce. And so at the beginning of this year, I knew it was going to be hard. I knew that there were going to be so many different changes and different things like that. And so, I decided to go with the word discipline. And so we have it's a butcher roll of paper. And, at the very bottom of it, I wrote discipline. And so I've given them the ability to come in, and it's usually weekly, sometimes daily, just honestly depends on what's going on in our lives at that point. They will come in and write something down on that board, and I am blown away at what they're writing. You know, I have the 5-year-old is saying, sissy, write this. And I'm like, wait, let me see this. And so the 5-year-old has just started baseball practice, and he asked Sissy to write 1 more rep. Okay. 1 more rep. Can you write that down? He said, 1 more bucket of balls. Okay. Can you write that down? So he's starting baseball, and I'm thinking, you know, we are a very sports oriented family. But there are also lessons there, that they're learning from that. And that's why I am so grateful, and I am such an advocate for, girls in sports, and, you know, and even boys in sports, because that is an outlet, for so many, but you also learn so many things about yourself, about other people, about how the world works, and how to deal with defeat.
Yeah, 100%. It's not all, you learn more sometimes from the defeat or like failures.
Absolutely. We don't like that, but
we don't like that, but it does happen. And so another thing that you said too was, and it's showing up in your kids clearly as well, but you said that you don't take victim mentality. And that's something so important to remember as someone, whatever painful past experiences you've gone through. I don't want you to compare your story with Melinda and I, like whatever you've gone through, that's your experience and it's valid. And, you know, picking the victim mentality only gives your power away to your abusers, right? And so can you just speak on that, what that looks like for you, not taking the victim mentality and really taking responsibility for your life now?
One of the things that, you know, I kind of sharing into another actual trauma that happened in my life is my oldest son was born at 26 weeks. So he was 1 pound and 14 ounces, you know, the percentage of life at that point was not very high. And the ability for him to, you know, I have to brag on him, but he's 6'2", 6'3" now.
He's handsome. He's so handsome.
He is gorgeous. Like, I'm just like, okay,
oh no, he's gonna be a
yes, he's gorgeous. He's playing as a freshman. He's getting some time on the mound playing baseball, and it does not have a physical deficit in any way. Mentally, he's at the top of his class. You know, cognitively, he's doing so well. Went into that whole scenario of his life and his birth hearing so many different lies of, well, why couldn't you carry your baby to term? What did you do? You know, you hear all these lies, and instead of saying, I did nothing, you know, I did not allow myself to manifest on those things, because I knew that something was being created bigger than what I was, and that I could not sit and say, my poor pitiful baby, what are we going to do now? I was by his side every day of his life, in the hospital, and it was never, even when he came out of the hospital, it wasn't something we didn't have a normal after hospital life. But I never allowed him to use that as an excuse. You can walk. Just because you're not going to walk at 1, you may walk at 2 or 3. We're going to walk. We're going to figure that out. Just because your speech is a little behind, that doesn't mean that you're not going to be able to speak. We're just going to work a little bit harder on that. And I think now, looking back, of the personality that he has, is he's going to make it or make it. And I don't realize how much of that has been impressed upon my children by just our actions. Because if I would have treated him like a delicate something that could not touch life, how far would he have gone? Would he have pushed himself? I don't know. But I have always thought that it's very important to put yourself out there, just like doing this with Aleesha. Do I really want to talk about this? No, but it's not that it bothers me, but it's just something that I feel that the more things that you do that are uncomfortable for you, because you know that they're good for you. I mean, there are some things that you shouldn't do because they're uncomfortable, but as long as you know that this has a good beneficial outcome and it's uncomfortable, the stronger you become day by day. So if there's an uncomfortable issue that you can accomplish on a daily basis, and that's what I tell my kids, you know, a lot of it goes back to sports. Yeah, this is hard. My daughter's running bleachers, and she's like, it's so hard. She was like, but look how strong my legs are. And I'm like, I know. Just imagine if mom was running bleachers too, you know?
So good. Right. No, I love that. Cause it really, that I want our audience to know, like, if one thing you want to take away from this interview to actually implement right now is find things that make you uncomfortable. Honestly, a lot of times, like every single week, I'm like, okay, what can I do that makes me uncomfortable? And then I actually go and do that. Like whether that's like, literally guys. So what's one thing that you've done that's like, you've chosen to do that's really uncomfortable recently, Melinda?
This sounds absolutely pitiful, but I've chosen to get up out of the bed before a specific time. Good. That's huge. Like, let me tell you, that is huge to me with 4 kids and getting in at midnight, because I like my sleep. That's something that I like, and I don't want anybody else messing with that. But you know what? It makes me uncomfortable. It makes me a little cranky, but then I have my coffee, I get over myself, and I move on without having that negativity throughout my day. And I don't have to feel guilty about still laying in bed, you know, after that process. So it's funny, the small things. It doesn't have to be something huge. You know, we talk about changing our habits, and I talk about that with my children all the time. Changing your habits. It doesn't have to be, we're going to go on a schedule where we have only 5 minutes of a break throughout the day. No, mine is just, you know what, Heifer, get up at 6 o'clock instead of 7:30, instead of rushing around. Like, you could actually have a decent moment instead of yelling at your kids.
Yeah, no, exactly. Like, choose something that makes you uncomfortable and just go do. Like, it can be anything. Like, hey, does it make you uncomfortable to go live? Go live.
Like, yes, absolutely. It always did. I have a business, and when I'm telling you, Aleesha, I'm talking about head between my knees, breathing like I just ran a marathon, and I'm like, okay, I just got to push send. I just got to do it. But you know what? That has been the most natural thing for me in my business now, and that's one of the things that is allowing my business to thrive. But had I not done that before the pandemic and everything else, had I not conquered those fears, it would have been that much harder. So you don't know what's coming, but you do know that you have those fears. So jump on those and see what you can do about them, because you don't know what the opportunities are that are coming out of those fears.
Yeah, exactly. I love that. So let's go there. I want to talk about your business. Why did you start Burkiebelles, and what does it mean to you, and what is it? I want people to know about it. We're going to post the links below so that you too get a beautiful t-shirt like this.
Fearless.
Much more. So I will post a link, so I'll make sure people know, but tell us about it.
Okay. Well, I had, my previous husband and I had a business building homes, and I was ordering shirts from a lady, and I was like, this is too expensive. Like, I can do this. So on a whim, went and got the equipment to do it, and was doing shirts for mainly just us. And that was my mentality. I'm just going to do shirts to support this business. And then, being from a small town in Oklahoma, football is a huge deal around here, and sports and everything else. And so, so I made a sports shirt to wear to the games. And I kind of thought, well, people have started asking me about it. And I was like, well, maybe I should put it on Facebook. I thought, okay. So I put it on Facebook, and I had over $2,800 in sales within 24 hours. And I'm like,
you're like,
I don't know how to take your money yet. I really don't know how to, like, I just had a notebook, and I was writing down people's sizes, and I'm like, well, I need their email for something. I don't know why, but I'm just going to get their email and your phone number. So I'm writing down on this notebook paper all this information. And then I had to figure out, how am I going to get some kind of e-commerce system? Anyway, got all that figured out, but it's crazy to me because I feel like I just always do things backwards. I just always do things backwards. I'm selling a shirt before I even know how to sell the shirt. So a couple of weeks go by, and another shirt goes viral, and then we just start in with this. I moved from my small office room into the back room. And then within 6 months of being there, I moved into a brick and mortar. And then after a year of being there, moved into a larger store. After a year of being there, I am where I'm now, upstairs in a larger space. And with that, I've been able to just create things that fulfill me. We have a new group called Rise. And that's mainly just because of some of the things that I have gone through. One of the things that always stuck out with me is, even though flowers are trampled on, they still grow. So rise up, that is all derived from just my past and what we can do now. So we're in the midst of creating this group, and such a neat camaraderie of women who've been through trauma, because it may not be sexual abuse. It may not be something else that I've gone through, but it's still trauma, and it still affects women in that way. And I think that's so important for us to realize that everybody has stuff. Everybody has stuff that they're trying to get over, they're trying to get through, or they're fixing to go through. What can we do as those who've been through the fire? What can we do to help bring a bucket to those, of water to those who need it?
Yeah.
So that's what my business has turned into. And I'll never forget my grandmother, when I'm like, hey, I need you to sew this. I was like pulling friends. I'm like, I need everybody,
Backup,
everybody's like, oh, are you making us work in the sweatshop again today? And I'm like, yes, I need everybody that I can get. I had people doing all kinds of different things. And, that was some of the funnest times and some of the most neat bonding times where, my business had grown so much. But through that process, my grandmother said, she said, Melinda, one day, she said, God has given this to you for a reason. And I'm like, for money? Like, I don't need, at that point, I wasn't in the need, I didn't need money. But now, here I am supporting my 4 children, and that's something that I kind of took for granted and kind of thought, well, grandma's gone off for, thinking crazy here. But, she really knew what she was talking about. And it has fulfilled me so much, not just by being able to be creative and make shirts, but to talk to other people, to have conversations with them, and to meet them where they are. It's just been.
You do an amazing job at that. Like,
oh,
amazing. I felt so loved, like, by you, like the moment I met you. I was like, I don't even know you, and I'm just like, you're beautiful. All these things that we were doing our photo shoot, and I was like, who is this lady? I was like, I can have her around.
Like, who's this crazy person? Yes.
No, I loved it. But no, something that you said, like, you did it backwards, and something to encourage our audience is, like, we don't have to have it all figured out. Like, you don't have to figure it out. If you have something on your heart, go do it, go create it. And even so funny that your words rise, because all my programs used to be called Rise Up Academy. And so that's a powerful word for me as well. But it's like, you don't have to have that all created. Like if you have something on your, go do it now, because we don't have all the time in the world. And that's like, I love about who you are, is that you go do it anyways. Like you're like, feel the fear and you go do it anyways. Like when you created this fearless shirt, I want to make sure I'm like showing off this shirt multiple times, but I love it. But the truth is like, yeah, you get to show up anyways. And so I loved hearing your story. And I would love to end on just sharing with our audience, if they're in a hard situation right now, what are some empowering things that they can do to take action to get out?
I would say one of the things that we've gone through in our group is you always hear bloom where you're planted, bloom where you're planted, bloom where you're planted. And that always has such a positive connotation attached to that. And I'm like, forget that nonsense. Like, I don't like where I'm planted, So I think the very first thing that you have to do is you have to realize where you're planted. Where are you planted? Yeah. And you may not like where you're planted right now. You may love where you're planted right now, but you do know that you're planted there for a reason right now. For this time, you're there for a reason. So figure out where you're planted and figure out why, figure out what gifts you can use that you have. And if you don't know your gifts, it's funny. I was sharing with my group. I didn't know that I could absolutely love, like I can love the snot out of somebody. I just truly can't. I didn't know that was a gift that I had. I didn't recognize that. And it's funny that you had brought that out, Aleesha, because some of my other friends are like, you truly do care about people like that, right? And I'm like, yeah, I do. And they're like, okay, yeah, that's a gift. I didn't know that was a gift. Somebody else had brought that gift out to me. So figure out where you're planted. It may not be where you want to be. It may not be what you like. It may not even be in the best soil, but you know what? You're there for a reason. You may not have chosen that place, but that's where you are. So let's figure out how you can use your gifts where you are. Figure out how you can. Sometimes the biggest thing for me is helping other people bloom in some of the hardest times. I have to figure out how to take care of myself. And sometimes taking care of myself is helping others. And then I think the last thing is, you got to draw a box around yourself. And you got to create those boundaries. If we have gorgeous flowers out there, we're not going to just let the wild come in and take them over. That's hard. As someone who's been abused, I know as someone who's been through trauma, I know that's difficult for you to create boundaries because you've never had those before. Nobody else has created those for you. But you get to do that. And you're worthy enough to create those boundaries. And you're worthy enough to say, you know what? I may walk in this room and I may not want to be around these people and I may not want to hear what they have to say about me, but I know that I can walk in and I can leave those words in that room and I can walk right back out. And that's what is so powerful to me, is that I've learned how to create those boundaries and know that, yes, sometimes I do have to go past the boundaries, but that doesn't mean I have to stay there. It does not mean that I have to stay there. I get to walk right back over into my safe zone and say, you know what I don't want to do is I don't want to take those negative emotions or connotations, or just, I don't know, sometimes as abused women, we are a little bit hyper vigilant about what we see in other people and what we think that they mean and what we think that they say. But with creating those boundaries is a really, really good stopping point. Before I come into my home, I'm here by myself with my 4 kids. And before I come into my home, whether they're in the car with me or they're already here or something else, I just take a moment and say, you know what, this is my safe place. This is a place that I get to protect, not only who's in there, but I get to protect my mindset before I go in so that I can protect them and I can protect myself. And that has changed my world. Completely changed my world. Has it taken a few minutes? Yeah, sometimes I sit there and argue with myself, like that's not a big deal. But the fact that I'm sitting there arguing with myself about it being a big deal makes me realize, hey, that's a huge deal. You need to get over that and you need to get in there with a good mindset.
Yeah. Wow. Yes. So many things there. Realize like where you're planted, show up powerfully there. And like you just said too, like show up for yourself first, because that is taking care of people. And just really setting that mindset wherever you're at, because it's a choice. Like you just said, it's a choice. Like no matter how long you're working for yourself, with yourself, it is a choice at the end of the day. So thank you so much for sharing those nuggets. I know we could talk
You're welcome.
all day long, and we probably will after this. But thank you so much for being on my show, and I know this is supportive for the audience. So again, I'm going to post your links below. Can they join that Rise group as well?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
We just ask that they're positive and that they don't share what, you know, is in that right. The last thing we want to do is share someone else's story that's not ours to tell. So those are just a few things that we ask at the beginning. And as long as they're, you know, in agreement with those rules, there's room for them all.
Yes, I love that. Good. I will post that link below too so people can join. Thank you so much.
All right.
Again.
Thanks, y'all. Thank you. I appreciate you, Aleesha. Bye.